You're listening to Fusion Patrol, a listener-supported podcast. Each week, we take a single episode of a science fiction TV series, movie, or audio and overanalyze it to within an inch of its life. Welcome to the discussion. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fusion Patrol. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Kenneth.
And tonight we are looking at Season 1, Episode 3 of The Invaders. Episode entitled, The Mutation. Episode synopsis. David Vincent is near the Texas-Mexico border, following up on reports of strange lights and sounds in the sky, but he is rolled by two locals who take his money and leave him to die in the desert. He doesn't die, but he is hospitalized. 3 weeks have passed since the sighting and the surrounding excitement of press and military investigations. Now Vincent is the only one left, save for one Air Force intelligence officer, Fellows, and he wants to leave too. Vincent is nearly killed in an obvious alien attempt on his life, but he is saved by Evans, a freelance newspaper reporter who thinks Vincent might be onto a lucrative story. He introduces Vincent to a witness of the spacecraft, local stripper Vicky. Vicky is a bit aloof, but offered $200, she agrees to show Vincent the site of the craft. We learn that both she and Evans are invaders, and this is a trap to kill Vincent. The next day, Vicky takes Vincent to the desert to find the craft. Along the way, she is not very talkative, and when they stop at a cantina for food, a boy catches fire. Vincent is burned, saving the boy, and angry that Vicky didn't even lift a finger to help the boy. The spacecraft is waiting for them to arrive, but as they approach, Vicky first points out where the craft is, then suddenly tries to talk Vincent out of it. He is persistent and sees the craft. Vicky keeps herself between him and the craft, delaying the invaders from incinerating him with their heat ray. When Vincent realizes this, he jumps aside, pulling Vicky with him, as the invaders burn his Jeep out of existence. Now they are on the run, on foot, and the invaders are pursuing them. Certain now that Vicky is an invader, he can't make sense of her game, and he demands answers. She explains that some of her people are born with a mutation, one they consider a defect. Her father had it, and he stood up to the others and was killed. Vicky has it too. She feels that life means something. Vincent paraphrases, "You've got feelings." Vicky counters, "You make it sound like I should be happy about it." One of the invaders catches him, but after a fight, Vincent manages to kill him, and his body vaporizes instantly. Vicky explains, this is how they die on Earth. Back in town, Fellows is following up and starts to get suspicious. He learns that Vicky had false references. He plans to search for Vincent, despite the fact that he's been ordered back to Washington. Vincent and Vicky come across a farm and take refuge with a man and woman who live there. He repairs their truck and heads to the nearest phone. Vicky wants to go with him, but he insists she stay. She tries to explain that she wants to be with him, that she finally understands feelings. Vincent doesn't take her. After he leaves, she reports his movements to the invaders. Vincent calls Fellows and gives away the location of the farm. Evans is eavesdropping and reports back to the other invaders. They get to the farm first and take the family and Vicky prisoner. Vincent arrives and notices something is amiss. Vicky rushes out warning him, but the others kill her. After a gunfight, all the invaders are killed, and Vincent sees the now repaired spacecraft leave. There is no proof when Fellows arrives. Vincent may be empty-handed, but Fellows, at least, seems convinced that it's worth more investigation. The end. All right. The Mutation. What do you think about The Mutation?
It was a perfectly watchable episode.
I find that true of most anything that had Suzanne Flechette in it, but
Yes,
you know,
yes.
yeah, it's.
I put it this way: it's not the most compelling hour or so of television I've ever seen, even from Quinn Martin, but it's far from the worst, so I can watch it.
I mean, I enjoy the episode. I think it should be far more important than it is, and there's a lot of opportunities in it that seem to be failed to explore. So, right, just the simplest one is Vincent has an alien with him, an alien who is helping him. Does he ask her anything at all about them?
No.
Nothing. Not why are they here? I mean, obviously it's to take over, but I mean, why? You know, what is there? There's so many questions I couldn't. If I were in that situation, you couldn't not ask. She might not give you the answers.
What is your home planet like? Where is it? What is your natural form? And so on and so forth.
All of those things would be questions that you would be in your mind, but Vincent seems to have no curiosity at all about it. And you could put that down as he is just a single-minded obsessive who wants to destroy them. Therefore, he doesn't care anything about how do I kill him, beyond that. But he shouldn't be that way. He should at least have some curiosity. He should at least want to try to understand the aliens better than he does. I mean, he didn't know anything about how they die until this episode.
Right.
And boom, that's how we die on Earth. Okay. Why? Like, is that a self-destruction thing? Is it a something to do with a process of making? I mean, just so many questions you could have asked her. And like I say, she might not have answered. But you have to ask. You have to ask something. I mean, the only thing he really asks her is, why did you help me? And okay, it's a fair question. It is a fair question. And we get a very sort of interesting answer, but it's an answer that raises so many other questions. So that's why I feel like this episode should have been momentous. This should have been like a Sweeps Weeks episode. Not saying it's good enough to be a Sweeps Weeks episode, but this is the kind of thing where, you battle the aliens and you don't know anything about the aliens. And then you come to the big, we want to get people in, and you reveal something about the aliens. You give something away that builds the mystery or deepens the plot. Because there will be many episodes where we learn nothing about the aliens. Nothing. Just they're here, they're doing naughty things. Vincent has to thwart them. And then, there you go. Yeah. But in this episode, we actually kind of learn a little bit about their nature, and yet no questions.
Yeah.
So that part kind of just really, really throws me about this episode. Not the continuity things like, wow, the spacecraft now has landing gear.
I noticed that.
Remember what I said? I think they said, we'll never show the ship again. Remember? And then they had to eat their words. There you go.
And
the legs
I went, yes,
made
and
it easy.
They did. And I went back and I counted aliens at the beginning of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then I counted how many died. And that left one to fly away.
Well, there certainly was 4 aliens chasing him.
Yeah.
In the desert, and he definitely killed all of those. I couldn't tell for sure how many were milling around at any given time at the foot of the ship. But of course, there's also Evans.
Yes. I'm not counting those. I'm talking about the ones in green jumpsuits.
Yeah. But
all right. And there was, at the beginning, before in the stinger, I guess we call it, I froze the frame, and there were 5 forms milling around.
Okay. I mean, I don't think that. Well, so here's the other question. Because the time of this event is really strange. Was Vincent in the hospital for 3 weeks?
Or did he show up?
I'm pretty sure he was early, but
early. Yeah.
All we're told is that it's now, when he gets out of the hospital, we're told it's now 3 weeks since the events, and that it's all died down. But what we see happen day 1, day 2 after the events,
I
and then
assume it was a
Vincent's in
couple
the
of days
hospital I have no idea.
at most.
So, but what we have to take into account is that in that time, they got a stripper into a local club. They got Evans as a reporter. They got
Yes.
2 high school students down there, and they got an old guy who's just wandering around the town. They got 4 aliens. Yeah, 4 aliens infiltrated into a town that's obviously a little tiny border town. And you don't add people to a town like that without people noticing.
Yes, which was why I wonder how long those town aliens had been there compared to the ship.
It feels to me like Vicky came after the ship arrived, based on the way the references checked
Yes,
and whatnot. And obviously Evans is
later
a
as well.
reporter, so he showed up later. But those other 3, who knows? I think, you know, I think it's logical to assume that they arrived with a ship. Not guaranteed, but this isn't where the ship was going, clearly, because it had damage and it landed. So, and then left. So I don't know. It kind of doesn't make sense. And I think that's part of the problem with this episode, is that it kind of doesn't make sense. It's different when Vincent goes into a town and we figure out that they've been there for 6 months or years or whatever it is. And it's something completely different when seems like it's an impromptu thing, like it
Yes.
is in this episode. So that also is a little off. Everything about it is just a little off. And I really do think this could have been a fantastic episode instead of just, yeah, it was all right. It was, I enjoyed it. It was good.
Yeah,
But
and I noticed little other little details about money.
okay. Did
So
you have the chance to check out pesos
yes, I mean
in
I read
1967?
yes. And then convert them to dollars in 1967 and run that up to today.
Okay, 300 pesos, 1967
You're going to love this.
is $7.
No, the exchange rate
Okay.
in 1967 is that 1 peso was okay. So, bottom line, I was going to make this simple, which is that bottom line is we're dealing with something close. 300 pesos comes closer to $33,000.
$33,000?
Oh, wait a minute. I put my zero in the wrong place here.
I was going to say
Okay.
$33 maybe.
Okay, that's going to be. You're right. That's right. I did that in a hurry. $3,287.69.
I got to tell you, that's hard to believe. I mean, I've lived next to Mexico my whole life, and pesos have never been worth anything.
But the exchange rate was 1 peso for $1.18 roughly.
What? Wow. Okay. I have to say I
And then you run that, so then you get to U.S. currency in 1967, but then you have to adjust for inflation to 2024. So in modern terms, is what we're looking at.
Huh. Wow. I mean, if you had asked me in 1973 or 4, when I was old enough to have a concept of that, first time I went to Mexico, I would have said a peso was about worth a penny.
At some point it probably was, but
I know now, the other thing we have to take into account is there's peso and there's new pesos, because the peso so grossly devaluated that they basically scrapped it and created a new peso, which is what they use now. And even that isn't worth a lot. I mean, worth a lot. I mean, that sounds dismissive. It's converting different units.
Yes, but
Peso is not $1.
I was surprised to see the exchange rate in 1967.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I'm going to look that up later, because
But
I find that hard to believe. But okay.
okay, yeah,
It's all right. Yeah, that would be a lot of money to hand over.
and he paid $200 US for information for her to take her out to the desert, and in 2024 currency that runs $1,858.24.
That one I believe. That one I totally believe. That I mean, obviously there's inflation, but there was a mid-70s inflation where everything just got reset. That really started messing us up. So yeah, that one I totally believe. But wow, never thought a peso was ever anywhere on parity with $1 in my lifetime. But
wait a minute, I see what I did wrong.
In parity with a penny?
I read it wrong. I read the exchange rate wrong. So scrap what I just said. But 1 peso, there were 117.75 pesos to the US dollar.
There we go. That's about what I remember from childhood.
So yeah,
it was about $3.
So that's not so bad. But
it doesn't. You can't. In a way, you can't compare that either, because $3 goes a lot further in Mexico than it did in the United States, even in 1967.
Yes.
Right. There's also that cost of living adjustment. So, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it was $200 was a lot more. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see.
But still, I was thinking about, so my little snafu notwithstanding, we have David Vincent who's walking around and he's able to hand out roughly $1,900 for a ride into the desert.
Well, it wasn't his money.
It came out of his wallet. Yeah, but still, and he's roaming the earth.
Yeah,
and who knows where he's getting his clothes. Right.
Yeah, it's unclear as to whether or not David Vincent is itinerant, or whether or not he still, has money. I don't know that he have an income, but he might. He might still have an income for all we know. He's not doing. We don't even know. He may still be doing architectural work
on the side. He may be a really good investor. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. They never really go into that in the show. He never appears to be destitute, and he never does a David Banner. He doesn't pull into town and go to the first business and go, I could really use a job. He never does that.
Yeah.
He may come in by bus, but that was a lot more common in 1967 too. So, that does kind of imply he doesn't have his own car, but yeah.
Yes. I did have another question here, and it comes from the manager of the strip club. When he found out that Vicky gave a false reference.
Yeah.
Why didn't he confront her? And
because she's hot and she's willing to take her clothes off in front of the guests.
But not for the TV screen.
Yeah, not for the TV screen.
Of course. But, I was thinking that was the tamest strip club ever.
I do think that in a place like that you probably wouldn't ask too many questions if it turned out to be false. Right? No, it's like she's doing the job and she's got the goods. And so, yeah. And I would tell you, watching this as an adult and watching it as a kid, I had no clue she was a stripper when I watched this as a kid. And maybe I didn't even know what a stripper was.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I honestly don't know. But, it is so tame.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't think I've ever actually seen a stripper perform, so I don't know, but she certainly seemed to go very quickly from I'm fully clothed to I'm going off the stage now.
She did.
That could be the way it was edited,
Uh,
but
well,
it was like woohoo and then off.
yeah. It's also broadcast standards in 1967.
Well, sure. But they did call her a stripper.
Yes.
So, I mean,
And
they did
I noticed
imply that she was naked.
yes, it did. And there's a plus when she's when she's behind the whatever it is, she's holding her clothes and they're out and people can see the clothes in her arm. I also noticed that the someone couldn't decide how to spell her name.
What, on the Viva Vicky
Vicky
sign?
Vickie or Vikki?
KKI. Yeah, I have it in my notes as Vikki, but I think that's where it was most obvious. But yeah, interesting that they're willing to paint the walls for her.
Yeah.
Now that one, if the owner of the club did indeed call her agent to get more girls like that, and finds out, there aren't any more girls like that. But what if there had been? All right, send a couple. And they go, oh, darn, we painted all the walls with Viva Vicky. Now we're going to have to paint Ariba Angela or something on some of the other walls or whatever.
Yeah.
It was.
Is she the only dancer there?
I think she's the only dancer there.
Yeah. Well, she stays busy at nights then. Okay.
Well, I mean, she is an invader. She has no social life.
And not much of a personality for a while.
So that's an interesting question. So there is that scene where Vincent and Evans are sitting at the table, and Evans is drooling away, and Vincent is his usual absolute stone-faced self. And after her dance is over, Evans says, "What do you think of our witness?" And Vincent says something like, I don't know yet. And Evans goes, "No, I'm in her dance." And Vincent's like, "Yeah, so did I." It's just like, and he gives the impression of, I don't know, is he suspicious? Is he suspicious of her at that moment? And
I was wondering, on the second watch through, I was looking for any hint of that.
He's definitely suspicious after she doesn't help the kid burn.
Yes. I get the suspicion that I think he was probably suspicious before that, when she was in the Jeep at least.
So he is really an awful person. I mean, he comes off as a really awful person. And this is a criticism the audience has had, that Vincent is a bit of an unlikable guy. He sits there talking with her and Evans, and he is not exactly a jerk, but he is, right? He is an unsympathetic guy. Just the way he carries himself and the way he behaves towards her and the way he behaves towards anyone else and all of that, right? And then when they're done and they've conducted her business and she gets up, he hits on her.
Yes.
And suddenly for just a moment, he acted like, I'm not saying it's the right thing for him to do, but for just a moment, it's like, is he sincere there? He's seen all she's got. He likes it, so he wants to buy her a drink. Is he trying to socialize with her? Why didn't he just offer her drink while they were already sitting there at the table? I don't quite get that scene. Or was it a test to see if she was an alien? And if she had been an alien, wouldn't she have gone ahead with it? To allay suspicions.
It's hard to tell, mainly because the script already has a number of holes in it. This could be another one.
Could be another one. It could be. So let's see. I want to avoid the discussion of her mutation until the last thing that we see. So I'm going to point out, we discussed this briefly, probably in the pilot, that Dominic Frontier Frontier, I don't know how it's pronounced.
Frontier.
I apologize, whichever way I got it wrong. Scored the pilot by reusing music he had from The Outer Limits and from some other show that he'd done. So it was his music to do with Eziad, but to get the pilot done, he rescored it in a kind of temporary fashion. Then he composed a proper score for it with this theme, which is what you heard for the end credits. And what did you think of that music at the end?
Perfectly kind of sci-fi music.
You think? I hate it. I think it's terrible. I mean, it's don't get me wrong. It's melodic and it's well instrumented, and I guess it's got a tune, and it doesn't fit this show. Maybe that's because of I think, but it doesn't fit the show. It's too sort of upbeat, and it's too sort of I don't know. It doesn't work. Well, that's exactly how the producers felt. They hated it, and they said, "Just stick with what we got. We like it a lot better." And that's the only time you'll ever hear this.
Okay.
Because it was in this episode, and it did go out once. And when I reviewed this for the website a while back, I didn't know that story. But even there, I have a note as the music, change it back. it's like this is not what we want. It just doesn't sound alien enough and weird enough. Okay, we already discussed it was the first time we saw an alien die. Well, we saw an alien die and vaporize. We saw a whole bunch of them probably die in the last episode, but
in flames.
In flames. Yeah. Screaming in pain, I might add. We'll come back to that. We've already mentioned what an elaborate plan this was, considering they only had a little bit of time. We get to see their blasters.
I was looking at those guns. I wonder who does the props people did a good job of making alien guns.
They were different, weren't they?
They didn't look human.
No, they didn't look like. Yeah, they didn't look like they were an evolution of. I hate to even say that because you could say, well, they're a handle and a gun. It does still have a sort of gun shape, but it doesn't have that sort of. This looks like it evolved from a pistol shooter, a lead thrower. It has a completely distinct look to it that it's like, yeah, all right, very cool. IMDb puts the location of the strip club as being a quickie mart, something like that, in Rancho Cucamonga. Yeah. I looked it up, and I'll be damned, it sure is.
Yep.
The street looks very different that they're on, but it has sidewalks and curbs and stuff now, but it is, and it's now it's a quickie mart now or something. I can't remember what it was called then, but the name's actually printed on the side of the building if you catch it. And there's an Heriberto's Mexican food restaurant in there as well.
Now, according to the IMDb page, which I have on my other screen, it was the Cinco de Mayo Market.
Yes, that was the original name, the Cinco de Mayo. You can see de Mayo at one point, even though he walks in and it's the strip club when Fellows walks in. But yeah, it is actually that place. It's right next to a high school or the Rancho Cucamonga school in the middle of the Los Angeles conurbation.
Yes. So, and the other listed filming location is Samuel Goldwyn Studios, West Hollywood.
Yeah, which is just studio. So
probably just a back lot.
Yeah, he could have been anything there. That could even be where the sets are located. So, Okay. I guess unless you have something that's not specifically about emotionless aliens.
No.
All right, then I'm going to move into the. First off, I thought it was an interesting line when she says, you'd probably call it a father or something like that.
She did say something like that.
Something like that. It was odd, considering that they don't seem to have any other examples of where they go. That old trope they go like, what do you call is back scratcher, or whatever, when they're translating from their language to your language, not necessarily the Invaders, but in any
Yes.
science fiction show, even shows with people from other countries, that's just an incredibly common trope to show that it's not my first language. This didn't feel like that. This felt like she was transferring a dissimilar concept to as close as a human could understand.
I get that.
That makes sense? Yeah.
Yes.
Which is an interesting way to do it and raises more questions that he should have asked. Right?
Yes.
It's like, God, you had an alien right there. Ask some questions, Vincent.
Well, you can blame that on David Chandler, who wrote the script, I guess.
I think all of these scripts, these first scripts, were based on a series of ideas from the creator of the show. I think the first 12 episodes.
Cohen? Was it Cohen?
Yeah, Cohen.
Yeah.
The first 12 episodes he had written out, like, I don't know how detailed, but he had some things. And those were handed over to the writers, even though he was now, off the show. But so there's the grain of an idea there, which in a way feels right to me. Right? The creator of the show is like, yeah, and then we've got this episode where I'm going to have the mutation where he's going to meet an alien who's got feelings, which they don't normally have. And you can see as that's a placeholder, in my mind, that's a placeholder for this is a big deal episode. But you hand it to somebody else who's just plotting the scripts out and like, oh, okay, fine. It's like, yeah, I can do that. Cover that. And then just go on. And not because they don't have the vision. Cohen had the vision of what the aliens were and what they were like and what they were, what their plot was. And then all the rest of the writers in that absence don't have that. They're just doing a Quinn Martin production week after week. And that I think is definitely shows the detriment of that loss that they have. She has a line. I'm still skirting the stuff. It's just that line, but it's in the area. Saving you is one thing, betraying them is another. Didn't saving him betray them?
Yes, it did.
Okay, just checking.
And she was doing that weird thing where she saved him, and I don't know if a few things later reported his position.
Yeah. Like, okay, I think that all comes down to this is a tough one, and I guess we're going to be talking about Star Trek here.
Okay.
Aliens without emotion.
Well, except Vulcans do have emotions.
Yes, Vulcans have emotion, but these aliens do not.
Unless they have the mutation.
Unless they have this mutation. So, now, this is a question you can't have about Star Trek, because every time you discuss Star Trek, and you talk, well, the Vulcans, they don't have emotions, but they do. They so obviously do. And, it would be incredibly hard to write for someone that had no emotion. Heck, they can't even write for computers on TV and not imbue them with emotion. Right? It's just impossible. And or darn near impossible. And so they are having that problem here. These aliens don't feel. So the concept is alien to them, truly alien to them. So like when he says, "Oh, so you feel," and she goes, you say that like I should be happy. Do you understand what that concept means? To be happy about it?
Yeah.
That's an emotion.
It is. Or we have 2 episodes before this we can talk about there too. I seem to remember in the pilot when we have the alien couple out in the woods.
They seem panicked.
I'll call that an emotion.
Yep. That would be incredibly hard to write. And the language, our language is infused with the concepts of emotion, just like she says, you expect me to be happy about that. It's like, well, kinda. It's like, but do you know what that means? Are you happy about it? You're not happy about it. You're upset about it. Well, the other aliens seem to apparently not like that. They see that as a defect. That feels to me like
An emotion.
disdain. Yeah. Yeah. That feels like a sense of superiority and therefore an emotion. This is a really tricky line that they went with, and it's a tough one. And I don't think they're going to manage to do it right because the aliens clearly have to have. They also have something else. They have desires.
That's an emotion.
They want our planet. Now, can you even have these things without emotion? What we have. How do I even put this? It's like everything about us, humans, everything about us is either something that gives us an evolutionary advantage or something that doesn't give us such an evolutionary advantage that it gets us killed. Right? It's
Right.
either something that helps. If it's something that hinders, it would die off. And if it's something that doesn't matter one way or another, it probably gets phased out anyway, eventually, because it's a waste of energy to produce it for no benefit.
Or
So,
there's a vestige of something like an appendix.
right, right. And that's in a way, it's kind of wasting away,
Yes.
right? It is that they have seen this in evolutionary studies that not only when a creature evolves something that is advantageous to them, right, for a particular situation, take them out of that situation and it begins to go away. It may change a different way, but in other words, the fact that your body doesn't get any benefit from growing a bigger bill, for example, on a bird. So it stops doing that. And then the bills kind of start to go down to a low energy state because it doesn't cost that something that they could be using somewhere else. It's very hard not to talk about that in terms of making it sound like there is a design to it, and but it is a pachinko machine in a way, but it's like so. I can see how this is going to be really, really tough for the writers to do this, but it sounds like okay. Take us back to the whole invaders are the communists, the Red Scare,
Right.
right? How do the communists get portrayed in shows in this era?
Well, they have emotions, and they're always the
They have
villains.
them. They have emotions, but at the same time, they're also first off they're always played as atheists,
Yeah.
um, because that's the official policy of the civil right. So they are automatically trying to play them as being people who are not in touch with, the vibe, man. It's like, right there is a sort of alienness to the way that they think. And I think that's what he's doing here. I think, there's always the Russian who doesn't buy into the party line and sees America as, wow, ice cream, you know? It's like, and they're the ones that can see a different way. And that's what Vicky is here. She's the alien that can see a different way. She has a different perspective than the rest of them. That perspective is informed by thinking that life has some meaning, which,
No, that got me. All right. It's we have an alien species that doesn't think life has meaning, even if
then
the
why do they
meaning
care if they survive?
right. So exactly. I mean, so that undercuts the whole issue of the justifying the conquest.
Right. Unless the only thing they have is a sense of superiority or a drive to wipe out everything else. And that could be.
No.
I mean,
Okay.
you could theoretically have a creature that evolved that it survives by killing everything it finds. I mean, it hasn't happened to my knowledge here on this planet, but yeah, I could certainly see that might be a survival strategy that might be successful. It feels like in the end, it's going to be short-sighted, but usually most survival strategies are short-sighted, right? They're about surviving, not necessarily about...
They're about the short term.
Yeah, they're about the short term. They're about long enough to breed and have more that can do in the short term. And anybody who doesn't realize that about humans is missing a very important reason is why things are bad when it comes to exploitation and short-sightedness when it comes to planning for long-term things.
Oh,
It's like, yeah, it's in our
horrible.
nature.
Yes.
It's in the nature of anything to not see that far into the future. So yeah, this feels like this should be a really interesting opportunity in this show to try to define what drives the invaders. It's like you can also take the position that, okay, because again, we've discussed this before, people who are rational, people who are logical, people who do not let emotions influence their decisions are never portrayed in a good light in television, or particularly not in American politics, right? It's
Right.
all about, you got to have those feelings. It's not about reasoning out what the best course of action is. John Koenig, slap his stupid face. I'd rather feel than think. You idiot. You shouldn't be in charge of
anything.
A garbage patrol, let alone a moon base, if you think that way. But that's the trope, and that's what we've got. That's what they're throwing on these guys. They think, they don't feel, therefore they are bad.
Okay, that's we could talk about Star Trek again. The Galileo 7, with that whole with
oh yeah,
McCoy sniping at Spock, and Spock finally sending off the flare in what's obvious, what looks like a burst of emotion.
Mm-hmm. A desperate burst of desperate gamble. Yep.
Yes.
And that's what saves the day.
Yes, it is.
It's insidious. It really is insidious. There is a, as you know, there is definitely an anti-intellectual streak in American discourse.
Has been for a long time.
Has been for a long time. And, that manifests itself in very obvious ways, like people deriding people who like to go to museums or, go to college and get like a degree, too big for your britches, that kind of thing. There's that. Or there's the people are tired of listening to you experts who know something about medicine and virology. We just want to take horse medicine and not wear masks. Or there just is this force back against learning and knowledge. And that is, that can be very overt, or it can be in shows like this where it is very kind of subtle. I mean, they're laying it on here just like they do in the Soviet things. It's like they're always going on about how they do it the Soviet way, and it's kind of implied that the Soviet way is the, I wouldn't say exactly intellectual way, but yeah, kind of is the unemotional way. It's the not feeling way. It's the what's best, not what's good. It's a difference. And if we want to, I'm not poking my finger at the invaders and say this TV show is what's wrong with America, but it is this kind of narrative that may be good for drama, but it does have a very low level kind of anti-rationality bent to it, right? Would David Vincent have saved the boy if he was just strictly guided by logic, guided by rationality?
Maybe, because maybe if he didn't stop the fire, the building would burn down around him.
He could just leave. That would be simpler.
Yeah.
But he didn't, right? There is that sort of caring. And let me be absolutely clear. I may be bagging on this anti-intellectual streak in these shows because it does irritate me. But at the same time, humans do care. That is part of our makeup. He didn't save that child. It would be extremely difficult for anyone to rationalize out not saving someone. You are wired the way you are wired, and it is not wired first for doing exactly the intelligence. There are people who wouldn't. There are certainly sociopaths who would not, because they don't have that empathy. But we do have that. So I'm not saying the world would be a better place if we were thinking that it just wouldn't be. That's not the way humans are. You do have to acknowledge that fact, but at the same time, that doesn't mean you have to denigrate thinking, planning, using logic and factual evidence to make your plans and make major decisions. Maybe not in the spur of the moment, because that's not the way we work. But if you're trying to do something like, save the world from an epidemic or pandemic or climate change or something, maybe you should put the emotions on the side and follow the data.
Yes.
So, yeah. I don't know whether I shouted it out loud on the viewing this time, but I think it's one of the better examples of it. And that was, of course, Chekhov's horse corral gate.
I saw that. Yes, that's how he knew when he got back.
This is how he knew when he got back. But when the guy told him, "Senor, the gate," it's like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll close the gate. And we're like, they wasted dialogue on that. Clearly, that's important.
Yeah.
I don't know why the aliens left the gate open, or even opened the gate, for that matter. But okay, they did.
Yeah, I was wondering why they did that, because they showed up inside the house. They showed up inside the house. Okay, got that. Oh, by the way, go open that gate.
Yeah, it didn't really seem like. Okay, here's what could have worked better. The problem with that is that I think the idea was that he was searching the corral, but the corral, you didn't need to go into it to search because it's a big open corral. If it had been a barn, made perfect sense. Right? If the horse had been in a barn and they'd gone in, looked around, and then not bothered to secure the door, totally would make sense. But the corral was a little bit over the line. I honestly don't know that I have anything else.
I have only the the title of the next episode,
which is
drumroll, Leeches.
The Leeches. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember this one. Okay, the Leeches. Ooh, icky leeches. Everybody hates leeches.
And interesting, but based on, I've just read the little description at the top of the page on.
Yeah, there are no leeches.
IMDb. There are no leeches, so I'll figure out what that is.
They are not giant mutant leeches. I'm sorry to disappoint anyone. Spoilers, but no giant leeches. Just like the word mutation is never used in this episode.
No.
She calls it. Well, no, wait. Maybe she did call it.
She calls it a difference.
She called it a difference. She may have called it a defect, but I don't recall her using the word mutation. Yeah. Of course, let's see. Last week was the experiment. Yeah, I guess that was an experiment. All right.
It was?
Yeah. We'll allow it. All right. In that case, Kenneth, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
And listeners, I do hope you'll join us all again next time on Fusion Patrol. This has been Fusion Patrol. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, we hope you'll consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/fusionpatrol or patreon.com/fusionpatrol. For our Patreon subscribers, we're currently running a special series on Babylon 5. Come join the conversation and find other content at fusionpatrol.com. You can contact us on social media where our Fediverse address is @podcast@fusionpatrol.com or by email at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. Fight the Future by Amberwolf is our theme music. You can find more from Amberwolf at bandcamp.com. This has been a Lone Locust production.